Hi everybody, welcome back to Pete's Plastic Playground. And as I've mentioned before, tonight's edition is to talk about dioramas and the 5 kits that I reckon, in my opinion, lend themselves particularly well to featuring in a diorama. Basic kits, simple to build, nothing complicated, and a simple baseboard to construct with common materials that you can easily obtain. But before we do that, what I'll just do is give you a quick update on the English Electric Lightning. And I've got so far as to paint that. I think it's Oxford blue, the colour, onto the spine of the aircraft and the vertical stabilizer. I spattered it all over the wings as well when it was starting off, but that will just rub down and get painted over when I've masked off the blue. But the Lightning's coming on a treat actually, and I'm enjoying building it enormously. To go straight into these dioramas, I've built half a dozen or so over the years, and you've seen them in another edition. So I just thought I'd start tonight with a nice cheap kit that I think is still readily available. I think Airfix in 172 and 148, and I think other manufacturers do a walrus as well. But it can be any seaplane, I guess, and to show it on water makes a really good scene. You could have it rescuing somebody, so a downed airman in a dinghy. I've seen it done before, where there's half an aircraft sticking out of the water, and it's you can create the scene where the crew of the walrus are sending a line over to the pilot that they're rescuing. And it doesn't need to be a huge diorama. Probably 8 or 10 inches square is enough to create a nice scene. And you can build it in a photo frame, or just using a piece of material. My favourite material at the moment is this. This is stuff that's used in the bathroom game to make walls waterproof before you tile or put wet wall panelling up. It's called cement-based plasterboard, and it's got a kind of a foam infill area. You can cut it with a Stanley knife to any shape. It's really light, and you can use PVA glue on it. It's really, really good material to use. So if you wanted to, you could set this in to some to a picture frame or something like that, and build a frame around it. And it's available in all sort of builders merchants, and it's cheap as well. It's not expensive to use, and you can get it in small sheets, so sort of 2 foot by 4 foot sheets, so you don't have to buy a wacky rate 8 foot by 4 foot sheet. So imagine, if you will, all the things you can do with a seaplane. You could have it on the slipway being pulled out of the water with a tractor, or lowered into the water, or you could have it landing with a great spray of water behind it as it's landing or taking off from the water. Now, making the sea, I've seen lots of people using resin compounds for making the water and so on. But what I've always done, or what I've done with this rescue launch, actually, I think I've shown you before, this is just a box of chocolates lid. And then I've put actually some polystyrene in and cut the shape out for the hull. And then put tin foil over. Now this is getting on a bit and it needs a bit of touching up, but it naturally ripples, and you can build it up around the vessel, and then just sort of like paint the spray, so to speak. And that's what I've done with this boat. But with the RAF rescue launch, it was slightly different. I again set it in I set this one in Weddy board, in moisture-proof board, and used a textured acrylic sheet, which was available from the model shop actually for creating that water. So it's actually pretty easy to create that water pattern, and then just paint it to whatever color you want. So that's a pretty simple, easy diorama that you can make with basic materials that you can easily obtain. A seaplane, big one, little one, whatever you want to do. I'm looking up in my stash now and seeing a Grumman duck. Now you could go and create a scene from that brilliant film with Peter O'Toole called Murphy's War. Does anybody remember that film? That was absolutely brilliant. So you could have it with a bomb load in a in a rope basket that he tied underneath the aircraft to bomb that German submarine. So number one is seaplanes. Number two is tanks, any tank you like. So this is an Airfix 176 scale King Tiger, and there's also here a Churchill tank. Now these two came in a classic conflict set, and the options are limitless really for what you can do. You can have one tank on its own, and you can choose the weather that the tank is in. It can be dry and dusty, it could be rainy and muddy, or you could even actually create some snow using readily available materials to create a snowy scene. You can have all sorts of options with figures mounted in, around, behind the tank, and you can create different contours of landscape, again using very simple sort of scrap modeling really. And if you want to make a hill or a landscape, again you can create the contours using this this moisture proof board, and then do an infill. I'm going to put a picture in here. Do an infill with some strips of cardboard that can create the contour of a landscape. Or if you've got polystyrene, you can do it with that as well, and just use some sort of coarse material, paint it using you know, sort of poster paints, that kind of thing, to create the colors and textures that you want, and then go so far as to make your own trees, bushes, foliage to suit your needs. I did that with the tank diorama that you can probably just see over my shoulder here, and those trees just came from the shop. Paid a couple of quid each for them and plonked them in, and they do the trick really. So number two from me is tanks, any tank you like, any scale you like. Easy to do. You could do a column of tanks, you could do a small battle scene, you could do it among buildings, and again the options are limitless, but it doesn't have to be complicated, and it's really good fun actually. It makes a nice change in my opinion to do some different modeling other than sticking bits of plastic together. It's nice to do something different that's a bit more creative and uses different skills, different materials, and to an extent it's not as finely detailed as making a model, making a kit, because when it comes to a terrain you can use polyfiller and just splodge it on and carve it to shape or whatever, and really go to town and make a nice uneven irregular shape for the landscape. So that's suggestion 2 is tanks. Staying on the ground, armor, artillery, small armored vehicles. Tanks are a different kettle of fish. This is different altogether. So looking at this little Airfix Bofors gun set, as I alluded to the other day, these are available in vintage classics, and they aren't expensive. But what you can do with the addition of some appropriate figures, you can create a nice little battle scene with these items quite easily. The vehicle could be parked up, there could be somebody standing on this step, but for example looking out with binoculars into the distance. You can have the probably position 2 guys on this Bofors gun who are about to train it up into the air to ready to fire the weapon. 2 or more of these in a group gives you a lot of scope for different scenarios. So this doesn't have to be in a sort of desert sand color. These could be in green for a European theatre battlefield. You could even do the German 88. There are so many options with this. There's a Bren gun carrier. There's a really good range of small armor that would go on a diorama that need be no more, certainly less than a foot square. So if you get a little photo frame and mount it in there, create whatever contours you want, whatever foliage you want, and create a nice little diorama that doesn't take a load of space to store once you've done it, and it will be really enjoyable to build, in my opinion. It's something that I haven't done yet. I built this with the intention of putting it in a dio. Haven't done it yet, but I probably will soon, one of these days. That's option 3 for dioramas. So 4, back in the water, a ship. Okay, so I've chosen HMS Fearless because there was a bloke who posted on Facebook the other day his excellent model of HMS Fearless, and he'd set it in San Carlos water, and he'd done it to an extremely high standard, and I really admired it. And having built HMS Fearless myself, I thought I'd bring it into this discussion now about dioramas because of the nature of the vessel itself. Now, it can be a bit of a fiddle to build because it is an old tooling, but it's worth it. It's worth persevering with because it's an amphibious landing craft ship, and you can have the stern of the ship open and depict it as flooded with the landing craft entering and exiting the ship. It comes with a couple of Wessex helicopters that you can mount in a sort of like a scene where they're flying around using some thin wire. Incidentally, a useful material for depicting things that are flying around is very thin plastic rod, readily available on Amazon and in model shops and so on. So it's always worth having some at home just in case you need it. Again, you can build the base in a number of methods, over with polystyrene, and use the tin foil and paint method for painting the sea, or you can use some resin or something like that to paint the water. But I think HMS Fearless is a great candidate for use as a diorama. It's an interesting ship, and there's lots of things you can do with it. Now, I built Fearless a year or so ago with the intention of mounting it in a dockside scene. And so I've made a bit of a mess of the board, but it is just polystyrene that I've carved, and I've set it in and filled the water with, sort of filled the gap in with some, I don't know what it was actually. I can't remember now. It might have been some decorator's cork actually that I just injected in, but it wasn't particularly successful, as you can see. But I think once it's painted, and with the intention of viewing the ship from the dockside, with a couple of cross deck ladders and what do you call them, jettyways, stepways up onto the ship, then it'll actually look fairly reasonable, I think. So if you can imagine it in Portsmouth Dockyard, even set a scene for Navy Days and have have it ready for visitors to arrive. The reason this project for me has stalled at the moment is that I've been trying to find a suitable dockyard crane, because I intended to have some rails along the dockside and a crane at one end, but I think, having found it difficult to obtain 1/600 scale dockside equipment, then I've kind of given up and got on with other things. But this one is lurking in the background. The ship itself in its basic form is pretty good, but I've seen other modelers who have put on great fine detail. That actually looks like rigging. In fact, it's not, it's cobwebs, which is very embarrassing indeed. But there we are. So HMS Fearless in 1/600 from Airfix, I think is a good candidate. So not too difficult to build the model, and lots of scope for making a diorama. So I'm just going to pop this back down here. So suggestion from me, number 5, the last one, a Harrier. Okay, the Harrier comes in many different forms, as you know, and was developed over the years since it was first introduced. You could start off with the Hawker P1127 and show it on a test flight or something like that. But my primary suggestion is to do a Harrier, a Royal Air Force Harrier, based in Germany during the Cold War, but have it set in a sort of forest scene, a makeshift out-based operations area where you can build it under some netting with all sorts of crew around it and auxiliary equipment around the aircraft. Have it next to in a sort of small clearing next to a road where it can land and take off from. And again, that gives opportunities for you to make scenery, build shrubbery, build trees. They'd have to be pretty big, I suppose, with a 148 Harrier, but it can be done. So you can get trees for O-gauge model railway layouts. But I think that an RAF GR3, GR5, GR7, GR9 Harrier in a scene somewhere in Germany, in the forest, would be absolutely brilliant. And so that's number 5 suggestion from me, is the RAF Harrier. In the past, I've really only ever built one RAF Harrier myself, and it didn't come out particularly well. But whenever I look at this one in the stash, which is a Falklands one, it's a Falklands set, but whenever I look at this in the stash, I often think of it and think to myself, yeah, we'll do this in the forest one day. So I think that would be good. Wouldn't be the first, plenty of people have done it before, so there's lots of research out there where you can get some inspiration from what other people have done before. You could even have it flying, perhaps, or landing. Now, people are really clever with creating effects with materials for exhaust and so on, and you could have a short clear plastic pole like this, just to show it on maybe on the last sort of like 10 feet before it hits the ground, but just show it above the ground. You could have the ground being affected by the jet blast, and have the sort of bushes bent over under the force of the jet blast. So there's all sorts of scope for a model. I will remind you that I did a Sea Harrier actually, and did a little dogfight double of it with the Skyhawk. So the Harrier, in all its forms, I think is a great subject for a diorama. So that's it for this edition, and I hope that you've enjoyed watching it, and I hope maybe if one of you gets some inspiration to get the scrap modelling going, then if that's the case, then it'll all be worthwhile. So whatever you're doing this week, as the nights continue to draw in, we get longer evenings at the workbench now. I hope you enjoy your modelling, and thank you for watching the video, and I'll be back again very soon indeed. Thank you for watching. Take care. All the best from Pete's Plastic Playground. Bye for now.